Are you currently thinking about starting a career in consulting or transitioning into consulting and wondering whether it's the right fit for you? In this video, I will talk about what consulting actually is, what kind of skills you need, and 5 things you should ask yourself to figure out whether it's the right career for you. This is all based on my own personal experience working in consulting for the past 2 years, as well as from other colleagues and mentors who gave me insights along the way. If you find this kind of content helpful, subscribe now down below and let's get into it. So, first things first, what actually is consulting? As a strategy or management consultant, you advise different companies, managers, and executives, often even on board level, regarding different business related topics. These topics can vary a lot depending on what type of problem the client approaches you with. It could have to do with increasing the revenue or optimizing marketing. It can have to do with leading a whole change project within the firm or even launching a new product in a new market. To solve these problems, consultants use structured, hypothesis driven methods. They will analyze the market and competitors and will arrive at a clear recommendation for the client at the end. For this type of job, there are several skills that are important. One of the skills that are required at a base level is analytical thinking in order to analyze trends, markets, business model, competitors, and so on. But that doesn't mean that you need to be the most analytical person and an absolute expert on this, because remember, you also will and can develop this kind of skill further in the job. Also, you should be good at making slides. It's not just a myth. Consultants actually, on a daily basis, produce a lot of slides and slideshows to present their ideas to the clients. So, if you don't enjoy this type of work at all, it might make the job harder, although AI can now actually support you in a lot of these types of tasks and take over making slides for you. Once you made the slides, you need to be able to present and communicate the content and your ideas effectively to your stakeholders and to your clients, which will mean that you need to be comfortable or need to get confident in presenting in front of people who are often way more senior than you are. Hereby, I noticed that consultants often use some type of business vocabulary that might not be common for everyone, which will often leave a good impression on stakeholders and clients. And I will make a separate video on that, so subscribe so you will not miss it. Another skill needed is to present your ideas in a structured way so that the audience can actually follow your train of thoughts, which will often include some type of storytelling as well, as to not lose your audience's attention. As a consultant, you also need to be good at stakeholder management, which requires some type of soft skills. Like you should be good at reading the room, you should be good at reading between the lines. If someone is telling you that is the problem we're facing as a business, is that really what they're saying, or is there something deeper underlying in this problem? You also need to be able to play into the political dynamics of a client's company. Trust me, that happened to me more often than I would have liked to, that I was kind of caught between delivering versus what the stakeholders on a political level actually want from us. You also need to be able to make good expectation management so that the client knows exactly what and what will not be delivered, just to basically avoid any kind of disappointment or dissatisfaction at the end of the project. Now, that actually leads us to the next point, because if you have a client that comes with a problem to you that will take a couple of weeks to solve, most often you will set up a project to solve this type of problem, which means you need to be able to manage a project well. That means you need to structure a project into clear milestones, have a very clear project governance, responsibilities. You need to diligently track the timing and the budget of the project, and you also take the responsibility for delivering what is expected in the end. As you can imagine, this will require you to be somewhat resistant to stress and able to manage yourself, but also other team members that you're working with. If you go the normal career path of a consultant, so starting, for example, as a business analyst, then going into consultant and working your way up as a senior consultant and so on, you will learn a lot of these skills on the job. So don't stress out if you're not an expert on all of these skills yet. This is more so to show you what kind of skills on a basic level you should be covering, or at least be willing to learn if you're going into consulting. Aside from these hard and soft skills that we've just discussed, in my opinion, there's 5 key questions that you should ask yourself to make sure that consulting is the right career for you personally. that you don't pursue it only because it's a highly esteemed job or you get a good salary, you get to travel. I think there is more to it, and you should make the right decision before just jumping head over heels into this kind of career. First, are you willing to work in a service job? Are you willing and able to put a client's needs first, even when it's inconvenient or doesn't seem to make any sense? Because in consulting, your work is driven by client expectations and not really by your preferred style or your preferred pace. Clients might change deadlines, require last minute adjustments, and they always require flexibility on your end. So you need to be okay with being flexible and professional, even when it doesn't seem ideal to you personally. Second, do you want to work in a fast paced, high pressure environment, often with long working hours? Ask yourself if you thrive under pressure and are able to manage stress well. If you're willing to put your work life balance aside. And if so, why? What is your intrinsic motivation? If you don't have any intrinsic motivation of working these over hours, other than being paid and like being highly esteemed for that type of job, you might lose your motivation rather quickly. Third, are you able to handle criticism well? Are you able to maintain emotional composure when your client yells at you or is stressed regarding a deadline? And yeah, definitely that has happened to me more than once. And you need to be somewhat resilient to that, to not freak out, frankly. Fourth, do you enjoy working closely with people and in teams? Because consultants on a regular or even daily basis have to collaborate with others, work in teams, they have to listen to others, present to others. So they're constantly surrounded by people, networking, and managing other stakeholders. If you enjoy teamwork, communication, and managing relationships, this will feel somewhat natural to you. But if you very much so prefer working alone, it might be a challenge. And fifth, are you okay with frequent change? Change of your project, your team members, your clients, sometimes even locations. Because consulting does offer a lot of variety. You get to get new insights into different industries and different problems. But also, you should ask yourself whether constant change for you is exciting or rather exhausting. Generally, as with any other role, you should ask yourself what matters most to you and how does that career or that role fit in with my expectations and personal values before you jump into any kind of job or career. For me personally, I never wanted to work in consulting because I do value a great work life balance. Also, even though consultants can be highly esteemed, there's also a notion that consultants are overpaid, they don't really know what they're talking about, they're arrogant, they're highly competitive, and so on. While I think that all of these things can be somewhat true, in the end, I decided to join consulting because I wanted to have a really steep learning curve and I wanted to learn how to solve problems in a structured way, how to analyze markets and trends and competitors, and just get an overall better understanding for business and business models in general. All of these things eventually made it worthwhile to go into consulting, but it also made clear to me that it's one step in my career that can propel my career forward in the short term, whereas it's not the type of career or role where I could see myself in the long term in a sustainable manner. Now, I'm also really interested to hear if you've had any kind of experience with consulting or consultants before, what kind of myths you heard, and what is your perception of consulting as a career in general. So drop a comment below, and thanks so much for watching. See you here next time.